burden of Moab, because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence, because in the night Ker of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He has gone up to Beith and to Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba. On all their heads shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth.
Hello, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing the book of Isaiah. Chapter 15, in the song, of course, matching up still. The burden of Moab. And this is the series of burdens in Isaiah. The burden of Babylon, the burden of Moab, the burden of the desert of the sea, the burden of Damascus, the burden of the valley of vision, the burden of Egypt, the burden of Tyre. That's all I can think of right now. That's most of them. And then it comes into the woes. Woe to Ariel. Woe to the land shadowing with wings. Woe to them that go down to Egypt. Woe, etc., etc. The burden of Moab. Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Because in the night Ker of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He has gone up to So, interestingly, the question, the first verse here sort of answers a question that has been asked. Like there's a why, or because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste. Because in the night Ker of Moab is laid waste. Because what? I don't know exactly. I could guess, but let's see if we get possibly a better sense. He has gone up to Beith and to Dibon and the high places. The high places to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba. On all their heads shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. On the tops of their houses and in their streets every one shall howl, weeping abundantly. Hold on a second. Because the way I bust this up into clauses, there's basically several sections here. So, maybe we should just read the whole thing and then we'll discuss it. That would be probably better. Let's keep going on the reading. All right, let's just read the whole thing. And that way I can talk about the whole thing. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. Okay, we read that. Weeping abundantly. Verse 4. And Heshbon shall cry, and Elilah, and their voice shall be heard even to Jahaz. Therefore the armed soldiers of Moab shall cry out. His life shall be grievous to him. My heart shall cry out for Moab. His fugitives shall flee unto Zoar, an heifer of 3 years old. No idea. But by the mounting up of Luhith, with weeping shall they go it up. For in the way of Horonaim they shall raise up a cry of destruction. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. Therefore the abundance they have gotten, and that which they have laid up shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. For the cry is gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, the howling thereof unto Beer Elim. For the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood, for I will bring more upon Dimon. Lions on him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. The burden of Moab. And these burdens are the prophetic doom, which either you can look at as the prophet carrying to the intended subject or as the subject carrying. I don't know if there's a proper way. I'm assuming it's actually the burden of Moab is Moab's burden, not the prophet's burden for Moab specifically, but specifically the burden that they must bear. I think I got that other notion of what it might mean. Like I said, based on Ezekiel, when they mock him, saying, "What is the burden of the Lord? What is the burden?" They're asking him, and he said, "Every man's word shall be his own burden," because he didn't like. Well, the Lord did not appreciate their attitude about it. What's the bad news from God? Because it gets to be. I understand. You have the same message over and over again, and maybe it's not good news. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to keep hearing the bad news, and so and eventually, especially if it's like, hey, the bad news is still coming, they're like, oh, you've been saying that forever. We don't buy it. So Moab is this nation that dwelt to the southeast of Israel, in that area, well, along with, just, to the west bank, not the west bank we think of it as now, but they were situated to the west and east of Israel, or west and east, really, Paul, west and east, okay, south and east, sorry, I believe. That's my recollection of the Moabites nation. Now, there's the Edomites, the Moabites, the Ammonites. These are all the nations that border Israel. They also happen to be somewhat kindred, because Esau being the brother of Jacob, and Moab and Ammon being the sons of Lot. You may remember that Lot was the nephew of Abraham, the patriarch who received the promise from God to become father of many nations, of course, on which much of the scripture is even based, that whole dynamic. And Lot was his nephew who lived in Sodom, who the Lord spared from the destruction of Sodom. But his wife was killed. She was not spared because she looked back. And therefore, when Lot was living sort of let's call it de-urbanized life, because the city he lived in had been destroyed, and so he was living in a cave with his. Why do I have cave in my head? I don't know why I thought they lived in a cave. Is that insane? I don't remember. It's not a story I can say I've gone back and read 50 times. But Lot would not allow his daughters to marry the locals because they were heathen, and so they got him drunk and got him to impregnate them. And that's where Moab and Ammon came from. In fact, their names, Moab indicates mother, my father's mother, or my mother's father, or of his mother's father. And when I looked up Ammon, it meant something like inbred. Like the names themselves mean that. I often have wondered, right, if Moab actually called himself Moab. But actually, they did call themselves the Moabites, yes. And it's perhaps because that's how they started out. I mean, it's sort of like if your nation was called the Bastards or something. I almost can't believe it that they actually called themselves, like the nation of incest or whatever. That's what they were known as. Because the names somewhat indicate that, which is kind of mind-bending. Now, as you read this, you might notice there are a lot of place names that are unfamiliar. It's not like Jerusalem and Samaria and Hebron. These are locations in the Holy Land that that we don't generally study. I'm not particularly familiar with them. I remember that I remember looking up these place names, and like I said, you can waste a lot of time on that, because I was like, okay, Beith and Dibon. I'm just going to show you an example of like how not to study the Bible. So when I was a young student, one of the things I was studying using a Strong's Concordance and a Green's Interlinear, and so I want to know what these words meant. Bayith and Dibon, or Dibon. I'm not even sure about the pronunciation, but I'm sure that J is a Y. That's about it. So, Bayith. What does it say? Bayith. That's right. Bayith. And how's this pronounced? Dibom. Why is there an M in there? Huh. Whatever. That's a little counterintuitive. So here's Bayith. Proper name, location. Definition. They always give you some sort of like... And I thought so. Bayith looks a lot like Beth, doesn't it? Like Bethel, Beth-aven, Bethlehem. And Beth means house in Hebrew. The house, Bethlehem is the house of bread. Bethel is house of God. And so Bayith is the house, right? And that might mean a temple or shrine. They have a place called Beth too. Except apparently like this this word is not the exact same thing though. I mean, it's apparently from the same, here it says, same as that one. Looks exactly, that's weird. Wait, what's the number? Oh, 106 and 103. See how close they are related. And it's not a capital letter. They look identical in Hebrew. I mean, seriously. There's Hebrew for house, like Beth. And tell me if you can tell the difference. In that Hebrew, I don't see any difference between them. So I don't know how they even know that was a different word. I don't know, man. Maybe they have some scholarly access to notes. I don't know. Here we have Dibon. Man, I wanted to grab something off the table to eat this morning. I thought a cookie, but a banana probably would have been good. Right. Let's see if one magically appears. Ooh, wrong place. Alright, so I just realized did I do that? Seriously? Those of you not watching on your computers, but just listening, I never even bothered to bring up those definitions. I did that whole thing with the, sorry. The problem is I can bring this thing up in front of me, and I didn't bring the other one up. And I did that, And I'll show you what I was talking about. Just this part, okay? Oh, wait. Here we go. See that? Bayith, right? And the one thing I think that was the most annoying that I just did was when I was like, oh yeah, it's the same as Bayith there, and then I compare the words. Like there's the Hebrew there, see that right? I highlighted it. Now look at the Hebrew for this other one. It looks like the same thing. And if I flip back and forth, I don't see a lick of difference between them. There's nothing. So I don't know why they even know that's a different word. Dibon, a proper name location. Of uncertain derivation. So, Strong may have a lot of times, yeah, see, look at Dr. Strong liked to speculate. Shorten, debone, from dub, pining. So he thought it came from this word that means pining. Now here's the thing. That may be a scholarly opinion. It may not even be right. To pine away the soul. And so what I would do is I would look at this to mope. That is figuratively to pine. Alright? It means to mope. Sorrow. So they name this. So then I used to take that and say, okay, now let's go back and examine this. Again, this is how not to study the Bible, by the way. So now we have a place name. Now we go back to our scripture. Oh, sorry. There it is. And we say, okay. So he has gone up to the house and to pining, the high places to weep. And I try to put in some sort of spiritual significance, And then we have Nebo. Nebo, I believe, is one of their gods. But it may also be the name of a city, because sometimes you name a city after your god. Howl over Nebo and Mediba. Let's look at that. The thing is, you do have to look at it a bit. What I'm saying is, how not to say about it's okay to look up the meaning of the place names. And that's not why I'm looking. Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure if it's a place name. So I'm going to look it up. And that makes sense to me because it'll tell me more about the word here, Enbo. So, yeah, proper name of a location or a proper name of a divinity. So Nebo is one of their gods. Yeah, Babylonian god Nebo. Nebu, also sometimes called probably a foreign derivation. Nebo, name of a Babylonian deity, also a mountain in Moab, a place in Palestine. Nebo. So, Mediba is a city in Moab. Again, from Mayim and Dobe, water of quiet. Now that may be what it's called. That sounds like the name of a city. I mean? Like we would be like, what should we call this city? Well, it's got some nice water and it's very quiet. So water of quiet, whatever. All right, so, but you can see how plugging that in, they shall howl over Nebo, uncertain derivation, and over water of quiet. They're hauling over the water of quiet because they've lost the water of quiet. And, what I'm saying is, place names are not necessarily supposed to be translated. And that there is not necessarily any intentional reason the place name is used. Now, sometimes, what I'm saying is the rule is not that place names should be translated and understood in translated form. That is not the rule. Generally, place names are regarded as place names, but they can have greater significance because they do it, like if someone says, you shall surely not have peace until you come to Jerusalem. The fact that Jerusalem is named, it's the fact that name Jerusalem means peaceable habitation, or city of peace, or whatever. Yaru Shalom, peace, it has some impact, perhaps. It might be, the author might intend that, like, you will not have peace till you come to the place called the peaceable habitation. Makes sense. In this context, I remember going through this, and some of the words, it kind of makes sense. They shall weep over the quiet waters. Oh yes, the times, the boring everyday aspects of life, the quietness of just getting water, and I could try reading into it. I just don't think, the point is, what I would read into it is not much more than what I already read without reading that into it. Meaning, most of what you're trying to plug into those words is based on the context anyways. And it's also based on what is reasonable in the Bible. Meaning, this is the sort of thing, whether it would be written of or not in the scripture. Meaning, if it sounds too offbeat, if translating the place name gives you some offbeat, sort of strange sounding passage, well, that may be a clue that you're down the wrong track. So I'm not saying there's no reason to ever look at the meaning of a place name and assign to it some significance within the context of the meaning of the passage beyond just it being a place. But it's actually rare. The meaning of the place is mostly going to be geographical. Like, there was a section where it talked about the Assyrian coming, he's coming, from the entering in at Hamath to the, in these different places as he comes and he's laying siege. And if you look at the different cities in that passage, like when back in chapter, 10 or 11, when the Assyrian was coming, as we went to the cities, if you looked at their geographic location, you'd see that they were closer and closer to Jerusalem. Meaning, so as the places were being named, it's like me, if I were to, like someone who grew up in my area, if I were to be like, he's marching through Elgin, and now through Streamwood, and Schaumburg, and Elk Grove, and now he's come to, it's been so long, Des Plaines. He's come to Des Plaines, and then the outskirts of Chicago, and now to the west side, and now finally to downtown. So I'm saying it's like someone who lives where I lived, growing up, would know that those towns are all not exactly in a line, but they are closer and closer to the heart of the city. And that was the purpose of the naming of those places in that passage. The purpose of the naming of the places in this passage is not clear to me. I mean, it's not obviously in a line or anything like that. But these are places that are significant to the Moabites for sure. Nebo, they will howl over Nebo. Nebo being the name of a god in a city named after a god, very likely a temple city. And when they talk about to Beith, when they've gone up to Beith and Dibon, it specifically says the high places. So I don't need to know the definition of Beith to understand that it has some religious signification. Just like the way Bethel was the house of God, Beith might be Beth Nebo. It may be the house of Nebo or the house of Chemosh or one of the other gods they worshipped. So they would go up to the high places to weep and howl over Medeba. Their temple cities that were destroyed or otherwise that did not offer any protection either. And why? I think the answer is, why has he gone up? Why has he gone to the high places to weep? He's howling over Medeba. Why? Because in the night, Ar of Moab is laid waste. Another city, Ar. I get addicted to looking them up, though, because I'm like, what do they mean? Does it have any? Because it is, sometimes there's not much you can say beyond what it means, Ar of Moab. Yeah, my quick definition, I'm not going to make you go through again. It says, quick definition is a place in Moab. And Kir of Moab, quick definition is Kir. Probably should say a place in Moab. Kir, a place in Moab. Ar. Yeah. Definitely. I'll show you one more time. See what I mean? The name of Kir means wall. You know what I mean? But whether or not that is the prophet has any when someone named the city, obviously we understand why they named it Wall. What are you going to call it? Wall. Is it because you're building that wall there? Yep. Wall. It's my city, Wall. It's funny because I remember reading a book by someone who grew up in, I think, Wall, Texas. Which is like a tiny little nothing town in Texas. So they do name them that way. All right. On all their heads should be baldness, every beard cut off. In the ancient Near East, that was one of the signs of mourning. When they were mourning, or when they're upset, they wanted to indicate their grief. Cut their beards, and shave their heads. And when you had a bald head, it meant sorrow and weeping and mourning. That's what. If I shaved my head, people would be like, "What's the matter? What's wrong? Why you've cut off your beard and your hair?" It's like something terrible must have happened, because they were so they wore those beards and that hair. It was so critical. A man, did not usually shave himself, not either the head or the beard. So they've gone up to the high places to weep over the spoiling of their people. The burden of Moab is the Assyrian, also taking them captive, surprising them in the night. Ar of Moab laid waste. Kir laid waste. I don't know that all their cities were conquered, but several of their cities laid waste. And then the morning comes in their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. That was also what they did. I remember a friend of mine once, and it hadn't occurred to me that people would wonder, what is sackcloth? I had thought about it too. Because there's this passage in Revelation where it says the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. And if I think of sackcloth, I think of burlap. And sackcloth made out of hair, I didn't even know what that meant. And why that is so black. No clues there. No clues obtained. But I do know that sackcloth would be like burlap, something that you would, it would be a rough cloth used for sacking. You wouldn't use your best cloth for sacks. That's why we use burlap, because a lot of times the purpose is just to contain something. Like it's not, it's strong enough and closed enough for the purpose it serves. And so people would put on sackcloth also as a sign of mourning. We don't really do any of these things. We don't shave our beard. I mean, I shave my beard every day. So no mourning, I don't do it for funerals, particularly. And so the sackcloth girding again, and then sometimes they would, sit in sackcloth and ashes as an outward sign of mourning. Jesus, though, in his Sermon on the Mount, he talked to us about when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, so that you don't appear to be fasting. And then in the New Testament, Jesus sort of urges us to not take every opportunity to show, suffering. Meaning, there's a degree to which, like if you're mourning, to show it is not shameful. It's not shameful to be in mourning, to be sad about the loss of a loved one or a tragedy. It's understandable for someone to have sorrow. In fact, it says in the scripture that it's better to be in the house of sorrow than in the house of mirth, because there's wisdom there. Right? So there's nothing wrong with being sad or mourning. But these overt, very ostentatious displays of fervent mourning or any such devotion, Jesus turns a little bit of a little shade on that when he says, anoint your head, wash your face, that thou appear not unto men to fast. Because fast is not exactly the same as mourning, but similarly, it was like a sort of a deprivation. And there was a point to which you could say like, oh, I want the world to know I'm mourning, so they can mourn with me. You know what I mean? And so, when you go to a funeral, people all dress in black, and lest they can be confused with someone who's not in mourning, I suppose, right? But but we don't make these crying and overt displays. I mean, people do cry, but what I mean is, cutting off the beard, the hair, sackcloth. We don't do as many things to ourselves personally. That's you cut off your beard. That's a big thing, and that's the point. Is like it's not just okay. It's not just it'll be all right. It's like they would mourn with gusto. And I don't recommend those things because, like I said, those kind of displays can be an opportunity to corrupt us, because people use emotion to manipulate one another. And like say, oh, I'm fasting, I want you to think I'm so religious. Or I could be like, oh, I'm so sad, I'm mourning, I'm fat, I'm putting on sackcloth and ashes, and I'm so sad. And overt displays of more emotion maybe than is actually felt are inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like, to just... You gotta understand that in the ancient world, they used to hire mourners. People who would come and wail and make a lot of noise. You know what I mean? And it was considered, like, good form. Like, if you have a funeral, there should be, like, big, loud crying. And they would hire people who were really good at it. Which is weird, right? We think that's weird. And they maybe mourn over much. And so we are counseled not to mourn over much. Because we should not sorrow as others who have no hope. As the Apostle Paul told us. Because we have hope. We have hope in Christ Jesus. So, no matter what the circumstances, no matter how black they may seem, we know that we have help in Christ. And then, whether we are, like this Moabite situation is very dark. They've had their cities sacked. Some of their people probably carried away prisoner. They maybe have lost family members, many of them. And so, they've many of their people have been killed or taken. And so, in their streets, they've come out in sackcloth on all their houses and in their streets, everyone howling and weeping abundantly because of all the losses. And Heshbon shall cry, and Elialah. God, I want to look up their place names, but really there's nothing there. Their voice shall be heard even to Jahaz. The place of the dividing of two friends. And Heshbon, blissful habitation, shall cry, and Elialah, God's water pitcher, their voice shall be heard unto Jahaz. Boredom. What I'm saying is, like, let's see what those words actually, let's see if they have any meaning. It's not a bad thing to do, like, because it's good to, like, go through it and be like, is it genuinely, is he right? What does Elialah mean? What does Heshbon mean? And what does Jahaz mean, right? Inquiring minds want to know. Elialah. El-Ale. Oh. El-Ale, I was pronouncing Elialah wrong. Or more properly, Jel-Allah. El-Ale, from El and Allah. God is going up. Oh, God is going up. Allah. Not Allah like the God Allah of the Muslims later on. Similar word. No more the same than God and God, okay? One letter does not make does not make the words the same. One letter difference can make a big difference in words. Sometimes no letter differences. Sometimes words are spelled exactly the same. God is going up. So the place is the going up, the place of God, the ascent to heaven. What a nice name for a place. Heshbon, or Cheshbon, or Cheshbon, or Cheshboneh. I don't know. Same as Cheshbon, place in the east of Jordan. No special, means, no meaning given. See, when you get only half the meanings, the point seems to be a proper location of a name. Yahat. A place you want. All right. Let's see. Yeah, see, Dr. Strong's thinks it's from an unused root meaning to stamp. Perhaps threshing floor. That's what I'm saying. It's like, you go through and you read it. And it's like, okay, he has heard from undefined place to threshing floor. And then to undefined place. So we have no insight gained. Heshbon shall cry. So what it means is the people of the city are weeping. And the armed soldiers weep out. His life shall be grievous to him. What does that mean? To me that means this, is that why do soldiers cry out and why do their lives become grievous? Or as I prefer to say, grievous. Grievous. I've said that on many occasions. As I said, I think grievous needs more syllables. Grievous seems a bit short. Because I'm feeling all grievy. Alright. A soldier's life becomes grievous, meaning like, I wish I was dead. It is a burden for me to bear my life. You know what I mean? Most of the time people like to live. Well, when does a soldier feel? Because he missed the battle. Of course, he missed the battle. Why? Because his friends are all dead. My friends are all dead. I should be dead with them. You know what I mean? Meaning, if I'd been there, I could have fought. And maybe we would have won. But I wasn't there, so we lost. And now I wish I was dead. That's what that means. At least that's what I think it means, because it seems that's what makes the most sense to me. Why would your life be grievous to you? You know, like, if only, I'm like, because my life was useless. Because there was a moment where my life could have made a difference, and I didn't make a difference. I didn't make a difference, and my life was worthless. And now I want to die, because now I'm past that point, and I didn't do what I could have done, and I can't become the person I would have been if I'd done that. You know what I mean? Like, there are times in life you come to decisions where you have to face a tough decision, and it makes you or breaks you in a sense, because you become the person who decided that, who either chose to fight or chose to flee. The person who chose to bend the knee, or the person who stood up defiantly. And ever after, you will be defined by your decision there. There are some things for which you can't make amends. You got to understand this. It's important, because it's true in Christianity too. Jesus is there to forgive you. He forgives us. There's no sin that I know of that he can't. You know, people will talk about the unpardonable sin. All exceptions to the rule aside, Jesus pardons your sins. I mean, Jesus can forgive murder. Most people haven't done anything that bad. And most people who think they've committed the unpardonable sin haven't, or should be more likely to focus on God's mercy. Meaning, focusing on God's mercy is more likely to help them, is what I mean. They should be focusing on God's mercy more likely, is what I meant to say. Because I don't see any point in focusing on God's judgment. If you're afraid God's going to judge you, I don't see the point in focusing on it. Like, well, here it comes. I'm going to be judged. There's no hope for me. I guess that's it. He's going to kill me, and there's nothing to it. No hope. No point in appealing to his mercy. No siree. No reason to do that. Why would I do that? I'm not looking for mercy. You don't want mercy. You just want justice. You know, I mean, I guess. But we should look to God's mercy, because there's no other way we're going to stand before God. Since there's no other way, then that's all you can stand on. You're not going to stand on your own 2 feet, on your own moral uprightness. You don't have it. And we come to places in life sometimes, you know, and there are places. Look, Judas came to that spot where he made a decision that was definitive, that defined him for all time. Ananias and Sapphira, they came to that point where they made a decision that defined them for all time as those who lied to the Holy Spirit and were slain at the feet of Peter. You know? Jesus is not playing games, on the other hand. Meaning, it doesn't mean that he is, like, if you're serious and not playing games, it's not that he is. You know, like, he's not tricking with you, but you know what I mean? But if you try to play with him, and this is what I'm getting at, if you play with him, he ain't playing. You know what I mean? You can't just do whatever you will and expect God to go along with it and be pleased. We just can't. There's a degree of offense which we can give, which would be definitive. And, you know, I've made some bad decisions in my life. Not tons, you know, but I've made some, right? Some. And in those bad decisions, yeah, it's like there have been times where, like, I wish I could go back, man, but I can't. I'm stuck forever. There were things that they do define me, not necessarily publicly, and not necessarily horribly, like I'm a coward, or, you know what I mean, or like something like, you know, he turned, like, you know, the battle came and he turned and ran, and he's a coward, and that forever, and people would just that's all they all ever remember about him. You know, I mean, it's like I had moments where it was like I had I'm trying to think of like a specific. I can't think of a specific. Let me think. But whatever you cut, well, I'll say this, in my marriage relationship, I had things I did that hurt my wife early in our marriage that took me years to sort of live down. Meaning, you make a few decisions or you say the wrong thing. You let the wrong words slip out of your mouth, like ingracious words, or you say something that's hurtful to someone. It can take years to repair something like that. I mean, so there's varying degrees of okay, sorry, I just saw a message. I need to make that message go away. I don't like desktop notifications. They're kind of because I look at them. Because I'm like, is that important? It would want a little window to pop up that said my computer's about to explode, and then I ignore it. I know that doesn't happen. So, I do like this verse. This clause, I think, is a very interesting clause because it is... That's one of the most informative things I've gotten this whole thing. I love little mysteries like that. Why are they crying? We should have been there, man. We should have been there. If we had been there, we could have made a difference. Or we'd at least be dead with our brothers and not ashamed. We'd at least be dead with our wives and not ashamed knowing tonight they're sleeping in the tent of some Assyrian soldier or soldiers and they're having their way with her. Oh, so much for my wife. I'll never see her again. You know. I guess I'll just go on living. Oh, maybe I'd rather not. Maybe my life has become a bit grievous to me. Maybe I'd rather not live it. You know, that's... People come to... I know the spirit. I understand. My life has been grievous to me sometimes. You know, there have been times where I felt like I didn't... Frequent times. Not so bad as that. I mean, I never had that true, like, that shame. But sometimes I feel like that. Like, when it comes to my works and stuff, it's like I have a lot of works I want to accomplish. And not accomplishing them is one of my nightmares. And so I want to get them done. And so, you know, if I feel like I'm not getting them done in my life, I feel like I'm not making the progress I should make in my life does start becoming a grief. I mean, just sometimes you ever felt annoyed, like just that you had to keep taking care of yourself, you had to keep eating? I remember being annoyed that I had to stop something because I'd eat. I was so into the task. I didn't want to stop it to even eat. You know, sometimes we become that engrossed in things because the works are that important, you know. And the works of God are that important to me. And certainly I feel like this intense desire not to fail at it. At least to use the gifts God has given me to the extent that He has expected me to use them. And so at least, you know, if you get like, whether you have 2 talents or 5 talents, you know, if you got 5, I'm just going to use the big, you know, maybe if I have 5 talents, I want to come back with at least 6. And maybe even 10, but not just the 5 or less. You know, like, you got to take those gifts and use them. So, like, yeah, it's like, maybe I'm not going to do the ultimate return on investment. But, sorry. I'm going to mute this for 1 second so I actually... Sorry, I should have actually put the camera off too. That would be better. Like I should get a little song, you know, some sort of little intro, little interlude, right there, and then right back to the scripture. Okay. So, all right. My heart shall cry for Moab; his fugitives shall flee unto Zoar. The prophet saying, my heart shall cry. Or the Lord himself. I'm not sure which. It doesn't matter because, in a sense, well, it doesn't matter. You can look at it either way. That's why I say it doesn't matter. You can look at it either way. You can look at it. It does matter. It is a big difference. But either way is plausible. If it's, you know, but why would one's heart cry? Let's just look at it just as one. Well, because of their sadness and their sorrow and their pain. It's a normal human feels the empathy of their situation. We're not all heartless. It's fugitives. Again, the ones who escape. I don't know what the heifer of 3 years old. All right. Now that's a mystery we got to get into a little bit. What is that all about? So what my first approach here was, I'm not a commentary guy. I almost never run to the commentary. Like in 3 years of this, it's almost been 3 years of Bible studies, right? And of this morning thing. I don't think, what was I going to say? Hold on. Oh, I don't think I've looked at a commentary on the actual Bible study maybe once. And even offline, I can only really think of 1 or 2 times that I've ever consulted a commentary. Not that there's anything wrong with it, because by watching me, you're consulting a commentary. I just, I want to have I like having a fresh look. I like that my take is my own. And I understand there's a handicap to it, but the thing is, the cool thing about Christianity is the essentials which we need to understand for salvation are not complicated, and you don't need a scholar to explain them to you. Though sometimes it doesn't hurt. Most of the truth is accessible without having it, go into getting Hebrew proficient and all that stuff. All right. Cry out if you Zoar. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary in that passage. So let's look at another translation first. My first impulse is not to go to a commentary, but to another translation. We'll try the good old Devil's translation. You know why? Because the NIV is not a word-for-word translation. It is a thought-for-thought translation, which means they try to figure out what the writer was thinking. And that is, I admire them for taking up that challenge. Because, it is challenging sometimes to figure out what was the author thinking. It's not necessarily the best translation, but it provides a particular kind of translation, which is particularly useful. Someone has tried to get into the thoughts. And what was their thought? They was like, all right, you know what? This is not a weird thing. This is a town. The town is called Eglath Shalishia. And Eglath Shalishia means the 3-year heifer. And that's what the name of the place is. Now, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's a good one. But, I don't know. I'm looking at it, I'm like, because they put it in, notice how they try to put out the, they put it in this particular thing here, so you can see the phrases, the clock. I do like that too, because this is kind of the prophet. Ar Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Kiriath Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. I like the because, and maybe it's not really there. Okay, fine. It is awkward to have those phrases at the beginning. It is exclamatory at the beginning, like they have it there. Because in the night, like this, Ar Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Kiriath Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. I don't think that's very poetic the way they did it actually, but it's okay. So, it makes sense when we say my heart cries out for Moab. Okay, Her fugitives shall flee as far as Zoar, as far as Eglath Shishayel. Can't pronounce it. It's probably right to say that this clause is supposed to be repeated. Her fugitives flee to Zoar. Her fugitives flee to Eglath Shalishia. See, the fugitives are fleeing to Zoar. They're also fleeing to Eglath Shalishia. They go up the hill to Luhith, weeping as they go. On the road to Horonaim, they lament their destruction. So notice that, again, that pairing of phrases. Every phrase has its companion. They go up to Luhith, weeping as they go. The road to Horonaim, they lament. Right? Same thing, the fugitives flee to Zoar. The fugitives flee to Eglath Shalishia. And that's probably how we should read that. Because otherwise, I challenge you. Come up with an interpretation for the 3-year heifer, please. They will be like a 3-year heifer in that they... And so here you go. Can you imagine how hard this passage would be to understand if they tried to translate every place name into a word? You know what I mean? So you just have all this random English jammed in there. So the burden of Moab, because in the night arrow of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Because in the night chair of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He has gone up to condominium and to glass of water, to the high places to weep. He shall howl over cheese grater and over the highway. All their heads, and I'm just doing that as an example to see, it would be so hard to interpret. I would be lost. Cheese grater. And obviously those are silly, some of those titles, but no less random than the 3-year heifer. You stick that in there, and you're like, what doth this mean? The 3, you're right? Okay. So they shall go mourning. Fugitives, Wait a second. I just wanted to check that word. Now that's a word. Okay, they have fugitives here. Okay, for some reason I thought it was a different word in the NIV. So they use fugitives too. So we don't need to. If the NIV also translates the word exactly the same as the King James, usually that means sound translation. Fugitives. Well, this is, of course, I had to, the quick definition gave me something unexpected. A bar. A bar. Now look at this. Here we go. This is a good example. Oh, now they've screwed with me. For a second, I thought it was something from Barak, a bolt, a bar, a bolt. And it's translated bar or fugitive. I don't know why. For a second I thought it was a mistake, like they gave the wrong number. Like it was linked up wrong. Because the definition's so off. But nope. Now, if you look at the NASB New American Standard Bible, right here, notice it's translated bar 3 times, bars 36 times, and bolt once. They managed to get through the entire Bible without translating that as fugitive. And so that's got me thinking. 41 occurrences. Oh, wait, I don't need to go back there. All right. Psalms. There's Jeremiah, Ezekiel. Fugitives. Interesting. And all the other places it's translated bars. Broken her bars, her bars, her bars, her bars. Does it just mean that? I mean, what? And you notice how this is even weirder. Look at this. You notice in Isaiah and all these other passages, Oh, there you go. Iron bar. Yeah, look at. Yeah, what is with that? Look at that. Isaiah 15:5. Apparently, the New American Standard Version doesn't even have an entry here. Look at that. NAS. Iron bar. Here? Nope. Doesn't even exist. Whatever. I'm glad it's not that important. I mean, there's so much in the Bible to understand. And thankfully, that's not all critical. There we go. So fugitive is a weird word there. Okay, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I was getting into trouble. But obviously the word, it can't refer to an iron bar. Unless it refers to them as iron bars. Those that were the iron bars of their society. Those who were the iron bars, the upright men, the strong men. I mean, I could start trying to interpreting it. They will become the weak ones who are mourning, right? They shall flee. For by the mountain up of Luhith, with weeping shall they go it up. In the way of Horonaim they shall raise up a cry of destruction. And again, there's some meaning there, but nothing we're going to be too concerned about. The main thing is that this is the place. The going up to Luhith, it sort of has this sense of there is a way up to Luhith. It is a place like you go up to. And I believe it is a place that would normally be going up rejoicing. Just like the high places. The high places that they go to weep at are also places where they go to worship gods. And also they go to celebrate and to, commemorate their great events and such things. And so, the place that they're going, the place that could be or should be a place of joy is now being filled with mourning and sorrow and weeping. And that's what's being noted by the prophet, that on the mountain up of Luhith, they will go up with weeping, and in Horonaim they shall raise up the cry of destruction. Meaning a cry that is alerting people to destruction. The cry that results from destruction. Destruction brings forth a cry. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, and the grass faileth, there is no green thing. I just realized we're out of time. Or just about. But it doesn't seem like we can finish it. Because, I could dwell another hour on this entire chapter, but it just doesn't seem right. Okay, the way of Horonaim, the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. So this is one of their notable water sources, because otherwise the meaning of this would be lost. Like Nimrim. Nimrim was a place where water was available. But the waters of Nimrim are desolate. And the hay withered away. The grass faileth. So on top of all this, we have an invasion, but also what it's suggesting here is drought also. Desolation and drought. And so, therefore, the abundance that they have gotten and that which they have built up, they shall carry away to the brook of the willows. The brook of the willows is probably another place name, in my opinion. Because it is a place, obviously. In that case, it's a heifer of 3 years old, not obviously a place. The brook of the willows, obviously. I think there's a town in the Chicago area called Willowbrook, right? Willowbrook sounds like a place name to me. Unlike a 3-year-old heifer. Like, no one ever named their town 3-year heifer, not that I know of. Well, apparently they did, right? Apparently they did. So, so they laid up, when the Assyrians go around raiding nations and stuff, you understand people. You understand how people are. Human beings live peaceably. They work. They gather. They store up stuff, And there's always other people who are like, hey, we could just go and take their stuff. Wouldn't that be easier than working ourselves and more fun? So we'll just go in and, when people come in, they'd raid and they just take everyone's, that they laid up all their goods for the next year, and, well, they won't need them because they're dead and now we have their goods. And their wives and their children are our slaves. That's what they do. And so there is an abundance they have gotten and laid up for the future, but they're carrying it as fugitives, as fleeing, as refugees, so to speak. Now they are carrying away their goods on their person. For the cry has gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, the howling thereof to Beer Elim. Like Beer Sheba, Beer, again, it means daughter of something. Beer Elim. Daughter of Elim, probably, or let's see how wrong that is. Oh, beer, well, not daughter. It means well of heroes. Well, there you go. Eglaim, no definition given. All right, I'm not going to go through that anymore. Now a place called the Well of Heroes. Since we're talking about the brook of the willows and the waters being dried up, it looks like they're looking for water. And of course, what do? Let's say your stuff you've laid up for yourself. You can't. You had a place to store it, but now you're carrying it. You're carrying all your worldly possessions. That's what this is imagery of. Fleeing fleeing from the fear of the Assyrians. And of course, the thing you need to find is a water source. So they're going to Nimrim, to Beer Elim, Eglaim. They're carrying it all to places where they think they can find water. But instead, they find this. The waters of Dimon shall be full of blood. For I will bring more upon Dimon. Lions. On him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant. It's like, because it's not over. The Assyrians come, take away captive. The fugitives are fleeing to Zoar, looking for water, carrying what they can carry with them. They're carrying whatever they can, possessions they can carry with their persons. They're trying to survive and make it somewhere, to get something to drink. They come and they find the waters of Dimon are full of blood and undrinkable, unless you fancy blood water. And more than that, lions, all the bloodshed, all the corpses are attracting wild animals, and the people that are escaped are being harassed by wild animals and maybe even preyed upon. A very dark picture the burden of Moab paints. And so we complete chapter 15. We'll go on to chapter 16 tomorrow, obviously. What is chapter 16? That the burden of, it's more about Ammon. Yeah, send ye the lamb to the rulers of the land. Oh yeah, I put 15 and 16 together. I really like these songs. All right, actually, I like the chapter 16 better than chapter 15. I guess what I mean is I like the song better. I'm just looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I like that song better because I was doing the song for today and all that, and I was thinking of 16. All right, well, thanks for joining me today. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, say your prayers and
the abundance
the
they
rest.
have gotten and that which they have laid up shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. For the cry is gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, the howling thereof unto Beer Elim. For the waters of Nimrim shall be full of blood, and I will bring more upon Dimon. Lions on him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the